Hello, everyone. It's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we are back here today for the final edition of our Shadows over Innistrad set review. I got Chaz with me today. How you doing, Chaz? Are you surviving after all of these days of talking Shadows over Innistrad?
We've survived, and I'm upset that it has to come to an end, but whip out your journals. We're going to dive into some colorless and some lands.
Colorless and lands. So let's get right into it. First off, we have a card that people have called the Ether Vial for spells. Is that a fair comparison, Chaz?
I guess so. It's pretty good. Brain in a Jar is an interesting take on what Aether Vial, I guess, should have been if it was fair. But this is a little less powerful than Aether Vial, at least.
Yeah, it's definitely less powerful than Ether Vial. You could say it is a fixed Ether Vial, I guess, for spells. As it's written, I really wonder if it's playable. It seems like it is extremely slow, and the biggest problem is with Ether Vial, if you've ever watched anyone play Merfolk or Death and Taxes or any of those type of decks, what they normally do is they get Ether Vial to 2 or 3, and they just let it sit there and put in a 2 or 3 drop every turn again and again until you die. Well, you can't really do that with Brain in a Jar, so you have to play this weird, like, birthing pod-esque curve of spells to really take advantage of it as you go up the line. So for me, I think that might be a deal breaker in Constructed.
Yeah, I think so too. Like you said, Aether Vial, it's so much easier just to get it to the counter level that you want it to stay at, leave it there, and you just keep extracting value from that. With Brain in a Jar, it does have like a reset valve, and you get to scry, and that's interesting and good. It's by no means bad, but it's just hard to restart the Brain in the Jar all over again. So I don't know. It seems a little clunky to kind of reset the card, but it is able to be reset, which is great. And yeah, it's pretty good, I guess. It's not Aether Vial, but it is fixed, so I guess we have to kind of take that at face value.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you can proliferate your way up to casting Enter the Infinite or something for 1,000,000 mana. There, that would be kind of cool. But I don't know. If I could leave it on 2 mana and cast Remand and Mana Leak for free all the time, or for 1 mana all the time, I would be all about it. As it is, even though you can reset it, it's just so slow. Like, you have
Yeah.
to take a turn off to remove counters, and then you're going to have to do it. You can have 1 turn of casting the spell with the number of counters you want, and then you're going to have to take another turn off to start doing it again. So it's just not nearly as consistent as Ether Vial.
No, not nearly at all.
Anyway, speaking of odd cards, I am surprised that Corrupted Grafstone was printed because they don't really print 2 mana rocks anymore.
Well, this would be 2 mana rock because it is kind of fair. It comes into play tapped, and you might not even get a mana when it comes into play.
That is true. It is very hard to use. It would take a very specific deck for it to be playable. I'm not sure that deck exists, but maybe there's a deck that wants it. To me, it's mostly disappointing because you can see how far the mighty have fallen. Compare this to Mind Stone or something like that, which is just a really good, enters the battlefield untapped. You can sack it to draw a card, which was a common or uncommon throughout the
Right.
years, and now a rare that enters the battlefield tapped and doesn't do anything unless you have a non-land colored card in your graveyard.
Yeah, like I said, you might not even be able to produce mana. Like you said, we've received mana rocks like this in the past. I mean, even Darksteel Ingot is better than this. So it's kind of hard to endorse Corrupted Grafstone.
We have moved into the world of equipment with Slayer's Plate. So this gives what was the card? Demon Hallbacker or something like that. +4/+2 it gives.
Yeah.
So it gives a lot of power and toughness, and when it dies, you get a spirit token. When the equipped creature dies, you get a spirit token, so you can potentially pay 3 and move this over to the spirit token and keep attacking for 5. Is that enough to see play, Chaz?
Well, considering it has to be a human to get the spirit, I don't know if that makes it any better. 3 and 3 to equip is not that great to begin with, but Hey, if it's any nod to Elusive Tormentor, I'm all for it.
That is true. That is a pretty fast clock on Elusive Tormentor.
Hey, see, I'm always thinking.
So yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's been so long since they've printed a good equipment that I automatically write off any equipment they print as unplayable because most of
Yeah,
them are. So
understandable.
I think they are skittish since they reprinted the second half of the Sword Cycle, and they were so good in Batterskull and New Phyrexia. So since then, equipment have suffered severely and been very nerfed in Magic: The Gathering.
Indeed, it has.
All right, Tamiyo's Journal. I actually really like this card. So Tamiyo's Journal is it can draw you a card every turn because you investigate. So after you get on the battlefield, you can pay 2 to draw a card, which isn't bad in the right deck. And then you can tap it, sacrifice 3 clues, so take some time off of drawing your cards, and you get to tutor. So I don't think this is a standard playable card, but this seems like a kind of card I would definitely want to play in Commander, a format like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seems so much better in that format. I don't know if this is constructed playable, but if clues are somehow viable, this might get play as a one of just to use whatever clue tokens you already had or get the third one you needed to be able to tutor on your turn essentially for free. So that might be interesting.
There are a lot of things, or several things, that can repeatedly make clue tokens. So it's not that unreasonable to think that, in the late game, you could draw this off the top and already have enough clue tokens to tutor maybe 2 turns in a row, maybe even more than that, just from playing lands and doing normal Magic stuff. So that's kind of, if you can repeatedly tutor for free with this for 5 mana, that's actually a pretty powerful effect.
Indeed, yeah. I'm intrigued. I like this card too, and I'm going to be watching this card to see if it makes any impact.
So it was a short segment on colorless cards, not that many rare artifacts in Shadows over Innistrad. So up next, we're going to take a couple minutes and talk about the lands. Actually, not that many lands in Shadows over Innistrad either, not rare ones anyway. So first off, we have the cycle of rare dual lands. I'm going to click through these ones, and then we'll talk about them. Foreboding Ruins, Fortified Village, Game Trail, and Port Town. So these are all the same land. When it enters the battlefield, you can reveal a plains or an island for Port Town, or whatever colors the other lands happen to be. If you don't, it enters the battlefield tapped. So where do these rank in the pantheon of dual lands, Chaz?
These are actually not bad. I think they're a little worse than just the straight up buddy lands that we've received in the past, where we look at Sun Petal Grove and Dragon Skull Summit, those buddy lands. But these are not bad, and I think they will be serviceable in constructed, at least standard. And who knows, maybe modern, I don't know. When you look at Shocklands, that might be pushing it. But for standard, it seems like the BFZ lands and these combine really well. And aggressive strategies really love these.
Yeah, for me, what they remind me of, and this is only true of probably, I guess, 2-color decks mostly, maybe some 3-color decks, but they remind me a little bit of the fast lands. In that, in a 2-color
Right.
deck, they should always come into play untapped turns 1, 2, maybe turns 3. But then in the late game, they're almost always going to come into play tapped unless you're intentionally holding lands in your hand when you draw them off the top. So I think the way they play out will be a lot like the fast lands, where it's untapped in the early game, which, as you said, makes them good for aggro, but then tapped in the late game. And as you mentioned, you covered so much of it, they work really well with the Battle for Zendikar lands, because the Battle for Zendikar lands, like Prairie Stream, is both at plains and islands, so you can reveal it to Port Town to make it come into play untapped and so forth.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's serviceable for standard. I don't know if it'll ever see play out. They'll ever see play outside of standard, but that's a lot of rare land cycles that have not ever seen play outside of standard. So I think that's all we can really hope for.
This one is one of the weirder lands they've printed in a while. So Drownyard Temple, as a colorless, you can pay 3 and return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. What is the point of Drownyard Temple?
The Gitrog monster. That's the point.
The combo, I guess, with the monster. So yeah, okay, I will buy that. That does work with the monster.
Yeah, now you do have to pay 3 to essentially be drawing your card, but Later on in the game, it becomes a little more negligible. I don't know how valuable that engine will be, but I'm sure this gets better as we go back into other formats rather than just standard.
I haven't really researched it yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is something you could do with it. So I don't know. It's just an odd design. I don't think we've seen a
Yeah.
land exactly like this before. So, but odd designs a lot of times are the cards that end up making some weird combo that no one had thought of because the effect never existed before. So we'll have to see. I guess it's also a sneaky landfall trigger. If you're playing a colorless land in
interesting.
landfall, you can get it back and pump up your, I don't know, whatever landfall. Not that
Your
landfall.
Bikindi slide runners.
Not that I don't think you can really play landfall with the fetch lands rotated, at least competitively. So I don't know. I like this card. I think it's very unique, and I'm interested to see if anyone figures out a way of breaking it in older formats.
Yeah, I think it's going to have its purposes. I mean, you look at some of these cards like Boom Bust, Death Cloud, just ways to set yourself up better than your opponent, and I think that's where this card comes in.
So the last land might be the most flavorful of them all. West Vale Abbey. So as a colorless, you can pay 5 and a life to make a white and black human cleric token, pay 5, sack 5 creatures, and you transform into Armendal Profane Prince. So Armendal Profane Prince, 9/7 flying lifelink indestructible haste, kind of a fixed dark depths. I've been seeing fixed a lot through these reviews. We've seen a lot of fixed versions of broken older cards.
Yeah, I think that's really a good analysis. It is kind of like a fixed dark depths, and I really love West Vale Abbey, actually. It is flavorful. It's also good. It's just a good card. And I would be really surprised if something like Black-White Tokens doesn't adopt a couple of copies of West Vale Abbey.
Yeah, I mean, being able to make a token is pretty nice on a land. Lands are just such low opportunity cost that even though paying 5 in a life for a 1/1 doesn't seem great, when you consider that that's sitting out there and casting your spells, and then in the late game, when you flood out a little bit and don't have anything else to do, you can still do something with your turn. You realize how strong these cards are, and it's definitely possible in the world of things like Lingering Souls and Spectral Procession that you could flip this pretty quickly on turn 5 into a pretty hard to beat threat.
Yeah, it has haste, lifelink, indestructible, flying. It just has everything. It does die to a Path to Exile in other formats or Swords to Plowshare, so that is unfortunate. But it is still a very formidable threat, and like I said, it would probably be pretty easy to get to the 5 creature cost, like to satisfy this card's flip clause.
So we've been talking a lot about Modern and even Legacy. Is it going to be possible to transform West Vale Abbey in Standard? Do you think that's a thing we'll see happen?
It gets a little harder in Standard, but maybe we get some more creatures that produce more like tokens in Eldritch Moon. I would definitely keep West Vale Abbey in mind.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's worth keeping in mind. I don't know if it could exist, but there might be a way to make it happen in an Eldrazi deck that uses Scion token producers.
Ooh, interesting.
And remember, the threshold for lands that produce colorless mana seen play is much lower now than normal because there are decks that are actively seeking out lands that produce colorless mana. So in an Eldrazi deck, you might see this show up just because it can produce colorless mana and there's some of the other options are rotating. So it might see play just by default because it's a land that taps for diamond mana.
That's true. Yeah, it does produce colorless. It might. That is an interesting way to look at it. In other colors, you get cards like the Catacomb Sifter, which gives you 2 creatures. That's already pretty on your way to the 5 creature clause. And who knows? I mean, we get to keep Dragon Fodder. We do lose Hordling Outburst, but we get to keep Dragon Fodder. There's cards like Nissa that produce creature tokens. Arlen Cord produces creature tokens. So you never know.
And unlike Modern, if you transform this, you're getting in one hit. I mean, assuming your opponent can't chump it, but there's no path to exile, there's no swords. Even the exile-based removal is all sorcery speed, so you're pretty much guaranteed to be able to gain that 9 life and probably hit your opponent for 9 when you flip it.
Right, unless they have an Anguish Unmaking, this is definitely connecting. And it only takes 1 Secure the Waste to get to this.
That is another good call. Secure the Waste can easily make those tokens, so, I don't know. This, I would say this is another against the odds card, but I'm not sure it's against the odds. This might just be a actual playable card.
This is not against the odds. This is already odds. Like, yeah, you're gonna win.
Yeah. So I definitely like this one. I love the flavor, and again, I've said this a few times. I'm excited to see where it shows up. So
this should start off another video series. Odds in your favor.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, every deck starts with 4 Jace Prince Prodigies, 4 Siege Rhinos.
Yeah, that would be a great foundation for the series.
All right, so that is the end of our lands discussion. Normally, we go back and pick a favorite card here and kind of sum up the colors, but since colorless and lands were a little shorter and we didn't have as many options, instead, Chaz, I wanted to ask you, since this is our final video of our set review, we've done this through all the videos, so overall, favorite card in Shadows over Innistrad. You can pick only one. What is the pick for your favorite card?
Oh, favorite card in Shadows over Innistrad. Oh, I think it's going to be Relentless Dead.
That is such a good choice. I think that is easy. If I had to pick the best card, that would clearly be my choice. I've written about it before. I might be going a little deep here, but I'm going to stick with Startled Awake. I just really love that card. I like the flavor on it. I think it's really cool. So, and for me, that's what Shadows over Innistrad is about. Like, yes, there's some good, powerful, playable cards we've been talking about, but it's really about the flavor, and for me, that card captures the flavor of Shadows over Innistrad better than any of the others.
Yeah. You know what? I think it actually has to be Arlen Court. I gotta stick with green. I love Relentless Dead, but I think I love Arlen Court a little bit more. It has to be Arlen Court, actually. I'm changing my mind.
Well, that is also a good choice. You're jumping between good choices, so you can't really go wrong with any of them.
Very true. Very true.
Anyway, Chaz, thank you so much for hanging out and doing these reviews. It's been a blast.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I'm really looking forward to doing this again with other sets. I really hope everyone enjoyed it.
Yeah, and everyone, thank you for watching. If you haven't caught all the earlier videos, make sure to jump back and check those out. We've gone over every single color, and we will have a couple of specials coming up in the next couple days with a Pauper video featuring Jake with his top 10 Pauper cards, and then a Commander video with Tomer talking about his top 10 Commander cards. So thank you for watching our Shadows over Innistrad stuff. Anything on the way out the door, Chaz?
Yeah, just a couple other comments. Definitely catch those videos with Tomer and Jake. I think those would be very beneficial. And definitely leave comments for us if this is something you want to continue to see. If you really like this series of videos, just let us know. If there's anything we can do better, let us know too, and we will try to incorporate that as we go along for the future sets.
Very true. Definitely leave your comments, and we will definitely be reading them and listening and taking your advice to heart. So anyway, thank you, Chaz, for hanging out. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we will talk to you soon.